yeah. So if you hydrate any of the seaweeds, they're the texture is completely different. It goes from crunchy to soft and slippery depending on the variety. Yeah. It's okay.
It's copying over.
That's okay.
60 seconds.
Then I'll just start by saying hi to everybody. Hi everybody.
Oh, hold on.
Oh,
Hold on.
Hi, Julie.
hi. My name's Julie. My name's Julie Drucker. I'm a seaweed harvester. I harvest seaweed from the Mendocino coast, and I sell seaweed, and I teach at festivals, and I do cooking classes and nutritional and the whole thing. So
Whereabouts?
So all over. I do a class up in Westport. I bring people to the ocean to help them, teach them about wildcrafting.
How nice.
Yeah, it's really fun. So, and I have a slideshow. While it's coming up, I'll just start talking about how I started doing this. I lived in Mendocino for almost 15 years.
Oh, that's fine.
And I lived in Albion, which is right on the coast. I was literally like a mile away. And I went, even before I moved up there, a friend of mine invited me. I was living in Berkeley. A friend of mine said, "Oh, you should come to the seaweed harvest. You would love it." She was making eggs for breakfast one day and started throwing these little black things in and served it to me. And I said, "Oh my God, that is absolutely delicious. That's the most delicious I've ever tasted." And she said, "Oh, you should come to the harvest and you'd love it." And so I had a weekend off from work and I got to go, and it was amazing. You'll see on the pictures what I saw, what you see when you're out there. And it's an incredible ecosystem that most people never see, because the ocean has to recede more than just a regular low tide. So every day there's 2 low tides and 2 high tides, right? And then in the spring and summer we have what are called minus tides. So the ocean will recede up to 5 feet more. Have you ever been into a tide pool?
Mm-hmm.
You know, that's what so those tide pools are exposed during those low tides, and that's the only time I can actually get seaweed. It's only about 30 days out of the whole year that I can go.
Oh, wow.
So it's very specialized and it's very difficult because it's slippery, the ocean is very strong, the seaweeds live, this particular seaweed that you just tried, sea pond, that lives in a place that most people would never ever venture, that one, because it needs this huge surge to reproduce, right? So it lives, so you have a cliff like this. I mean, you've probably all seen this surge. It lives in this edge of a cliff. So here is the cliff face, or a huge rock, and here's the surge, like, doing this. And so you have to go to where it lives. And of course, that's my favorite. I'm kind of a daredevil in that way. You know, I've kind of always been like that. And so they all live in different ecosystems, just like plants. And they all have different, they all have different properties. We have 600 varieties of seaweed on our coast. Between Vancouver and Monterey, we have a very, very unusual system that creates this nutrient-rich. It's like a humongous garden. And so, you know when you walk on the beach and you see these huge racks of like seaweed, like all these huge piles?
Yes, big racks.
Yeah. That comes from these areas that I go, because I'm cutting it from the rock, but that's dredged up from all these areas. So it's, thank you. There's handouts. And the seaweeds, because of this nutrient-rich environment, are packed with nutrients, totally packed. So all of the trace minerals that we need to survive, magnesium, phosphorus, I can go, I can't remember these, magnesium, phosphorus, potassium, iodine, humongous in a lot of them. We have 3 different types of seaweeds, brown, red, and green. The brown seaweeds have these 3 constituents. One of them is called alginate. And alginate is used like a binder. So in seaweeds like kombu and wakame, it's what creates that mucilaginous quality, and it's what binds the iodine to your intestines. It also carries out heavy metals on its back. So we have, so the seaweeds that I harvest 8 varieties. Out of the 600, I harvest 8.
Wow.
And those 8 are ones that have been tested for very high levels of alginate, fucodin, I never pronounce exactly, mannitol, like these different constituents. All of that is in your handout, so I don't have to keep repeating it. Yeah, would you?
So, do you need alginate to bind the iodine to get it assimilated into your body?
It's both. It binds to get it inside. It does two things. It does both. It binds it to keep the minerals in, but it also expels heavy metals and toxicity.
Wow.
So they did a study after Chernobyl in the 80s, and they found that people that ate kombu right after Chernobyl had a much, much lower rate of cancer than anybody else. So it really, when it's in your intestines, it's like a magnet. It will ding, 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 like send radars out to the radioactivity, and then it will, when you expel it, the radioactivity will be expelled, which is amazing. It's just an amazing seaweed. I mean, they're all, but some of them are just like, ah. So what I was thinking is just to have you try all of them, and then talk about each one as you're eating it, like the different properties in each, because I can talk on and on, but if you don't like the taste of it, then you're not going to eat it. And the main thing is eating it.
Everyone tried that?
Unless you come from either a macrobiotic background or your family is Asian or just, like Japanophiles, you probably will not have grown up with seaweed. I didn't. My family was Jews from Vienna, Viennese Jews. We didn't have seaweed. But some ancestor of mine harvested because I'm super drawn to it. But every culture in the world, like the Irish and the English and the French and the Australians, the Maori from New Zealand, they all have a very, very long history of eating seaweed. On our coast in Mendocino, the Pomo are the main tribe. They're smaller tribes under the Pomo. And this is their traditional, this is how they eat it. This is, they make it in coconut oil like this. And when they dried it, they would harvest, they would come inland, come to the coast and make fires on the beach and then carry it with them the whole rest of the year.
Wow.
So the way I'm drying it isn't so different, except I lay it out in the sun and the sun dries it. It's very close.
So for women who had radiation therapy, or prevent damage from radiation therapy, cancer patients, this is probably a very good thing. Yeah.
Well, kombu, yeah. So let me try. This kombu is, that's not kombu. That's nori.
I see nori. I like that. I think it's like the sushi.
You just take a little piece from the bag. Just cut off a little piece. We'll pass it around. This is the kombu that I've been talking about that has alginate and takes out heavy metals.
And what is this called? Heavy metal?
What is this called?
Kombu.
I have to see it. Oh, kombu. Oh, okay. If I see
Lemon
it written,
area.
This is the one you have to cook with, not eat, right?
Well, I eat them all out of the bag, but it's a little tougher, the kombu. All you have to do is soak it for 5 minutes in warm water, and it completely.
I put in soups.
Is that just raw? I mean, is that treated in any way, or is that just harvested and dried?
I cut that from they call it stipe. I lay it on tables in the sun, and that's it. It's not nothing else has been done to it. You see, you get that chewy and the kind of mucilaginous. That mucilaginous is the alginate, and that's the property that.
I feel I could get addicted to this.
Well, the nori, it's really interesting. Nori has a
Yeah.
huge amount of protein, and somebody like me that needs to eat every 2 hours is brilliant. So like I'm in the car, I literally take about an ounce with me in the car, and I'll eat half of it. Yeah.
How much by volume is an ounce? A lot?
That's an ounce that I passed around.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Okay.
So they say, I'm voracious about reading about seaweed, and they say that most people living in our culture need at least an ounce a week of seaweed. Whether you can, I also tell people, if you get it from me like that, you put it in a jar, a mason jar like this, make sure it's sealed, because seaweed picks up moisture from everywhere. And then I always have a scissor next to the jar, so I just cut, you're not because you do this right, I just cut little pieces into everything I'm making.
Yes.
I'm making oatmeal, I put some wakame in. I'm making my bone broth, I put kombu in. I'm making anything, I'm making like some kind of salad, then I put the sea palm in. It's mainly what you like and what you will eat. That's mainly what I tell people, because I've had so many years of somebody will get really excited, they'll try nori and they'll buy a big bag, and a year later I'll see them and I'll be at their house maybe and they're like, Julie, I have this nori in the top shelf, and they're like reaching the top and it's like in the same brown plastic, and I'm like, you haven't touched it. Well, I'm sorry, do you think it's still good? This has happened to me repeatedly. I'm like, oh, just put it in a jar so you can see it. So if you can, for me, if I can see something visually, I will eat it. And I think most people will like that. So just if you're like, oh, I'm making scrambled eggs. Oh, I'll try putting some sea palm in. Or,
I love it.
you know, I'm making bean soup. I'm gonna throw some wakame in. You know.
I have a seaweed drawer.
Oh, you're my kind of lady.
I have bottles about like that, and each bottle is filled with different.
Oh, that's
The
great.
seaweed drawer.
That's fabulous. I have mine in like 3-quart jars. That's how much I eat.
So tell us about how long it lasts in the drawer or in a closet. How long does dried seaweed last?
It can last up to 10 years.
Yeah, with flour.
But you really want to eat it within 2 years because it starts to lose its chi. I sell my seaweed within 2 years, but I also have it packed really. If it does collect moisture, even in the drawer, you just put it on a cookie sheet, put it on low. Any kind of heat will dry it out. Just know that it has to be stored in a sealed container, and glass jars are the best. But I mean, they found seaweed in like King Tut's. I mean, like these crazy tunes.
Source of salt and salts, really.
Right. I mean, I was selling to an herb shop years ago, and about a year later, they called me and says, "You have to come down here. This nori, we can't sell it." And I went down there, and it was white. So sometimes they call it salt bloom. So if it gets moisture, the salt that's inside it will spread through the seaweed. And I tried it, and I went, "Oh my God, it's delicious." She said, "I can't sell it because of how it looks." And I was like, "Don't worry, I'll leave it on. It's delicious. I will totally eat it." So, would you like to try this?
I did.
Okay. So
that is nori. This is
nori. This is kombu.
And what was the thread-like thing?
This is sea palm.
Sea palm.
And kombu, I've used it when I was cooking beans in the past. It supposedly speeds up the process.
There's a phyto acid in beans. I never remember what it's called. That kombu.
Lactins and phytates. Phytic acid.
Phytic acid. And kombu will eliminate those. So if you're soaking beans, you just throw a little piece in, and then you can either discard the piece or I just eat it afterwards. And drain the beans, and I've never had flatulence since I've started doing this, never.
Yep.
And before that, I could not eat beans. Yeah, it's amazing. It really works.
And
but
so
the
tell us,
nori is good for what? What does it do? It has minerals in it?
Nori, yeah, they all have all the trace minerals: potassium, phosphorus, magnesium, manganese, vitamin K, vitamin B. This has a lot of vitamin B. The most niacin and vitamin B and vitamin C of any of the seaweeds, and iron and protein. So this is like really, really. They did studies that if you could eat nothing for an entire year but nori, you wouldn't lack in any minerals. You would have everything you needed in this one seaweed.
a nori diet.
It's true. It's amazing. I was like, wow, because.
What about the iodine? Can you get too much iodine?
You can there are a few people that I've known over the years that have had iodine poisoning. If you've had that, which is pretty rare, then you shouldn't eat so much of the seaweeds. But I have a friend who was in a very serious car accident in her 20s, and they did massive amounts of radiation. And she's a douser by trade, so she heals people doing dousing. And she doused all the seaweeds, and the only one she could eat was kombu, of all of them. So they have large amounts of iodine in them. It makes sense after all that radiation that kombu would be the one. Yeah.
I suppose if you're doing iodine, you need selenium, so maybe they were missing that.
Maybe.
So
I'm
I'm supposed to have a CT scan on Monday, so it would be good for me to eat some seaweed before and after.
And then forever after.
Oh.
Not just like a day after.
Every day for the rest
Every day
of
for the
your
rest
life.
of my life. I'm just like the seaweed pusher. I'm totally like, that should be my title, seaweed pusher.
Oh, and tell us about the Fukushima and the sphere around seaweeds and sources and what happens to the seaweed and all that.
So, Fukushima has devastated most of the Asian ecosystems. And there was a big study in 2003 2015 through the University of San Diego, where they tested only Pacific Coast seaweeds. So the 600 varieties, they just tested those, and they knew that if they tested just the seaweeds, it would show that it could be in everything else, and seaweed's a marker species. They didn't find any. Every year, I think to myself, can I keep doing this? Is this my last year? Oh please, oh please, oh please, I know, please. And so far they haven't found any traceable radioactive isotopes on the Pacific coast. They have found some in Washington State, and they have found some in Oregon, but they haven't found any here. So.
And they found it in seaweeds up there.
In Japan.
In Oregon and Washington.
Yeah.
I was wondering, is there something seaweed does for itself that it, you know?
It does. Kombu actually will. What it does inside us is what it does in the ocean. It cleans toxins, but to a certain point. You know, you can only do that to a certain point. You know, the other seaweed harvesters and I, we go back and forth on this. I personally am more worried about like ocean liners and the stuff coming out of the ocean liners and boats than I am about Fukushima. Although, honestly, if Fukushima were to affect their seaweeds, there's no way I could keep harvesting. There's no way I could do it. But until that happens, until I see the definitive study that says there are radioactive isotopes in the Pacific Coast seaweeds, then I will stop. But until that moment, I won't. It's too beneficial for me, for all of us.
You've been eating it through the disaster. You look pretty healthy.
Yeah. Yeah.
She just glows in the dark.
I know. I don't go a day without it. It's really funny. I love it.
How many ounces of seaweed do you consume per day?
Do I consume?
Yeah.
I probably consume at least 2 ounces a week, probably more. I mean, when I'm packaging, I definitely do more because while I'm packaging, I'm like, this is really, this is a great batch. Oh, I'll try this. That's really good too. And also, I'll just be, trying it. And for my, it's so, I don't know how to say this, but it's so beneficial for energy. I mean, I have energy already because my family gave it to me, but I really have it because of the seaweed. I can tell.
So, like, how much is this? Like, just so I can get, like, how many, is this an ounce?
Well, yeah, the bag would be filled up a little more, but that's an ounce.
So you eat 2 ounces a week, you think?
I probably,
okay.
I might eat more than that, but yeah,
okay.
yeah. I mean, I probably also need more because I'll give, when I do a farmer's market or an event, I say to people, do you like salty and crunchy? And usually yeah. And usually 9 out of 10 people will eat the entire table. Like, they'll eat the whole sample. They will love it. I'm not kidding. They need it so much. And then there's always a 10th person that'll go, oh, I don't like seaweed. And probably, I talked to nutritionists, probably it's because they have a colder constitution, because these seaweeds are cooling foods, and I have heat inside me. So on that level alone, I really go for it. But the minerals, I can't say enough. You want to try another seaweed?
Sure.
This is like taste test.
So what is your favorite, since you have all these whole drawer full of?
What's my favorite?
No, she was asking you, she was looking at me and said, well, I have like arami and wakame and all the names they don't even know.
Yeah, arame is a East Coast seaweed. Is Atlantic? We don't have that here. Let's see. I tried to do this.
And at some point, can you tell us how you made the nori with the coconut oil?
Oh yeah, it's so easy. So this one is actually really salty. You know when I don't know how many of you have been to the ocean, but those bobbing, the bull kelp?
Sea kelp.
The sea kelp, right. So on top of those bulbs, there are 2